Greetings and welcome to Flanagan's Ecologic. I am your host, Ted Flanagan, and today I'm joined by Bob Freling. He's the executive director of SELF, the Solar Electric Light Fund. Just delighted to have Bob on the podcast today. Bob, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Ted. Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Well, it's just delightful to have you on the podcast. And I presume you're in Washington, D.C. right now.
Actually, yes. I mean, just outside in Maryland, but very close to the nation's capital.
And did you grow up there? Is that home for you?
No, I grew up in Dallas, Texas.
Of course. But now, moving kind of quickly, you went to Yale and you studied Russian studies, right? And how did that come about? What an interesting thing to do in college.
Well, once upon a time before I was obsessed with solar, I was obsessed with languages. That was my passion. In high school, I'd studied initially Spanish and then French. And then actually I was a senior in high school and read Anna Karenina and was so blown away by by this novel. I thought to myself, if Tolstoy is this good in English, imagine what he must be like in the original Russian. And that inspired me to study Russian. And that was a significant decision for me because I ended up actually spending 2 semesters in the former Soviet Union in Leningrad. And then 2 years later, after graduating, I went back and spent a semester at the Pushkin Institute in Moscow.
How fascinating. And then, building on this language theme, you became a Chinese translator. Is that right? That's a very impressive thing to me.
Well, it wasn't right after Russian. It was a process, but yeah, I had received a Rotary scholarship to study Mandarin in Taiwan. So in 1983, I went off to Taipei and spent a year learning how to speak, not reading or writing. It was just learning how to speak.
Yeah.
But then I came back and went to graduate school and then went back to Taiwan in '88, and that's when I really took a deeper dive into the written language and eventually learned it well enough to be a translator.
So you've really had, for all of your life, you've had a passion for international studies, different languages. Do your parents influence you? What do you attribute that to? Any?
Certainly not my parents. My father spoke legalese fluently because he was a lawyer, but that was the extent of his linguistic abilities. Yeah. When I was 15 years old, I had studied Spanish in junior high, and I heard about a program based out of Brattleboro, Vermont, called the Experiment in International Living. And through that program, I went to live with a family in Colima, Mexico for a month. And I learned more Spanish in that 1 month than I had in like 2 or 3 years of school.
Just immerse yourself in it.
Yeah, total immersion. And that was what gave me the passion for languages, learning, immersing myself and realizing that it unlocked a whole new world of culture and understanding of different people. So it all started with the Experiment in International Living.
How great! And now you've worked in over 20 countries, I gather. We'll get to that. You wanted to mention how Amory Lovins influenced you to get into this clean energy space. Is this the right time to do that?
Well, sure. It was actually when I was living in Taiwan, and I was involved in this anti-nuclear movement. At the time, Taiwan had 3 nuclear power plants. This is a small country, densely populated. Now, I think 24 million people. Yeah. 3 existing nuclear power plants in an earthquake zone. So think Fukushima. Yeah. They were trying to build a 4th nuclear power plant, which they eventually did, but it was never turned on. And I thought if anybody could talk some sense into the Taiwanese officials, it would be Amory. So I arranged for him to come give a talk at Taipower, which is the state-owned electric power utility. And through that experience, I had to deal with the Ministry of Economic Affairs, and I discovered a library housed within the ministry that collected books and periodicals on various forms of energy. And I used to go spend time in that library reading up on the latest advances in photovoltaics, a subject which I had already become interested in. And one fateful day, I read about a solar project in Western China in a very remote part of Gansu province, and a project that had been implemented by the Washington, D.C. based nonprofit, the Solar Electric Light Fund. So I was very excited, went home and wrote a letter to the founder and started a dialogue. And one thing led to the next. He ended up hiring me to go live in China and work on this project for 3 months.
And that was that Neville Williams, right? Who was the founder?
Correct. Neville was the founder. Yeah.
And so you joined in 1995 to be director of international programs. And then was it 1997 that you took over as the executive director, and he went off to work for this solar electric light companies. Is that right?
Correct. We spun off a for-profit affiliate, Selco, which is now based in India and doing wonderful work under the leadership of Harish Handy.
So what is SELF's mission? How would you describe the organization for our listeners?
Well, Ted, it's actually evolved over the years. When we were founded by Neville, it had a very singular focus, which was to disseminate solar home systems in developing countries at the household level and use microcredit to enable families to actually pay for and take ownership in their solar home systems.
And it would be all off-grid at that point.
All off-grid and in places that weren't likely to be connected to the grid anytime in the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
And
so you were really giving access to electricity for the first time in these developing countries.
Yeah, this was in the early 90s. We were real pioneers at the time. Very few folks had heard of knew what a solar home system was, but we raised funds from primarily foundations to create these revolving loan funds. We thought that credit was key because if you had to pay cash, very, very few families could afford it. But if you provided access to microcredit and enabled these rural families to pay over time and use money that traditionally would go to kerosene, for example, they could actually afford to purchase solar home systems. And once you provided that access to credit, it unlocked a whole new universe of potential for solar electricity at the household level to start becoming commercially viable. And that's actually what made possible us to launch a for-profit affiliate, because we proved in a series of 7 projects around the world, 7 countries, that if you provide access to microcredit, a significant number of families are willing and able to pay for these solar systems in their homes.
And how big were those solar systems when you started out? Were they in the less than a kilowatt, I presume?
Oh my gosh, no, we're talking maybe 50 watts.
50 watts, okay.
Very small, enough to power a few lights, a radio, and maybe a black and white television. Modest by our standards, but still life-changing, right? Imagine, living with kerosene and what that does.
Oh, sure.
It's carcinogenic. Children can't read or study night. And so it was a game changer just to bring light and radio and television into a rural home. But when we launched Selco and Neville offered me the opportunity to take over the nonprofit, I said to Neville, I love bringing lights to homes, but we can do so much more. I'd become increasingly aware of and intrigued by the opportunity to harness photovoltaic technology to address a much wider spectrum of needs, not just at the household level, but at the community level. So Neville basically said, you've got carte blanche. You can recreate self in your own vision. And so with blessings from the board, we expanded our mandate to look at a much wider universe of applications where we could use solar energy to improve health and education and income generation. That was the real shift that happened under my leadership, was to move from just solar home systems to a whole village approach to.
And so you maintained the nonprofit side, which I guess was providing solar in areas and microcredit in areas where there really wasn't a market established. And then Selco went off to take care of the for-profit side of the shop, sort of.
That's exactly right. We decided to retain our nonprofit status and work in that capacity because there were many needs that were desperately not being fulfilled, and yet we could use the power of the sun to bring clean water, to power schools and health clinics and small businesses, and bring connectivity to rural communities. And so that's been a big part of our journey over the last 25 years, has been to connect the dots and demonstrate with projects on the ground the many ways in which solar energy can help advance all of the sustainable development goals.
Fantastic. Let's talk a little bit more. You're so eloquent. Let's talk a little bit more about the benefits. Students can study at night if they have light, right?
Yeah.
And talk about the educational side just for a second.
Sure. Well, that's at the household level, right? Just
Yeah.
bringing light into a home, they can study, um, which is significant in and of itself. But now, when you take a school and you bring electricity to the school and computers,
Yeah.
and then connectivity, wow, that's a game changer. And our first example of doing that was in the year 2000. We were working in South Africa, and I had met the principal of a high school, Mayeka High School, Malusi Zwami. And I was describing the internet, and he got very excited. Bob, that's incredible. I wish we could have the internet at our school,
Yeah.
but that will never happen because we don't have electricity to even power computers. Well, about a year later, Mayeka High School had 20 computers that were donated by Dell Computers, and that were all powered by solar. We also installed a satellite dish at the school to deliver internet access. So suddenly you had a major transformation occur at the school where these kids could not only go on computers, they could go online and access the universe of information that we all have been able to take for granted.
Yeah, it's incredible. Next benefit, water for irrigation.
And don't forget for drinking, right?
Okay. Yeah, right. For
Right.
drinking.
I mean, that's pretty basic in terms of the Maslowian hierarchy of needs, water and food. But in the case of Benin, which is a small country in West Africa, sandwiched between Togo and Nigeria, we were introduced. I met a gentleman, actually a professor at Texas A&M, who had just come back from a visit to his home village in Benin, northern Benin, a very arid, dry part of the country. And he said, Bob, we're desperate. None of these villages are connected to the grid. We need to look at alternatives. Can you help us? We ended up visiting and sitting down with the community. We never like to impose solutions, Ted, from the outside. We prefer to sit down and have a dialogue with the community, and through this process of exchanging ideas, come to understand what's driving their needs and priorities. And in the case of Benin, their number one concern was lack of food security, especially during the dry season, which runs from November through April. No local food production. You could see a bunch of kids with distended bellies, a telltale sign of malnutrition.
Yeah.
And they asked if we could help address this. And I thought, well, what can we do as a solar energy nonprofit? I knew enough about drip irrigation to think that could be part of the solution. So I reached out and contacted a drip irrigation expert, Dov Pasternak, he passed away, but he was an Israeli drip irrigation expert who had moved to Africa to dedicate his life to bringing the benefits of drip irrigation to sub-Saharan Africa, especially
So just much more precise application of limited water.
Exactly, because with drip irrigation, you're delivering small amounts of water directly to the roots of crops. Yeah. And in arid environments where water is restricted, this is ideal because you can grow all kinds of fruits and vegetables with a minimum amount of water. Dove had developed what he called the African market garden, using drip irrigation to grow food in places like Burkina Faso and Niger and Mali, Senegal. I approached Dove Pasternak and invited him to work with us in Benin. Initially, he wanted to use diesel generators to pump water. And I said, Dove, no, that's not going to work. We want to go with a solar. They're going to be ultimately cheaper than diesel gen sets and obviously more sustainable. So we took the name African Market Garden, we tweaked it. Now we call it the Solar Market Garden. And we started off with 2 pilot villages in northern Benin. And the results were quite dramatic. Women farming cooperatives were growing several tons of produce and earning an income for the first time.
So in some cases, Bob, there must have been water in the groundwater, and it just hadn't been accessible. And in other cases, people were walking hours to get water and carry jugs back. Is that right?
Well, yeah, jugs for drinking, and in terms of watering gardens, they would take gourds, hollowed out gourds, and try to water these gardens by hand. Very limited in terms of what you could do
by using a conventional well, and sort of on a chain.
Exactly. So with the solar electric pumps, we were actually drawing water from an underground aquifer using boreholes. and using solar electric pumps to pump the water up to a reservoir. And then we would use gravity to feed the drip irrigation line. So you didn't even need batteries, which are often a weak part of a photovoltaic system, because they're the ones typically to die first. The solar panels are warranted for 25 years, but the batteries, if they're not cared for, will go first, and then the whole system is rendered inoperative. But in the case of solar drip irrigation, we didn't even need to use batteries, which was
right. You use the reservoir as your storage mechanism. During the sunny period of the day, you're pumping water up to the reservoir. You've got a supply there, drip irrigation from that point. How great.
Yeah.
And then another huge benefit is just the whole healthcare angle, right? And telemedicine. And why don't you talk about that as well?
Sure. I mean, there's so many different angles that you can talk about when it comes to energy access and health. First, just bringing clean energy into a home and substituting kerosene lanterns with electric light. Suddenly, folks don't have to be subjected to the carcinogenic fumes produced by kerosene lanterns. About 4 million people die every year from indoor air pollution, living with kerosene and cooking over open fires. So there's that aspect of health.
You said, I think you said million, but I think you meant billion.
Well,
didn't you?
No, 1.4 million people die of indoor air pollution
each year.
Yeah, I may be wrong on that statistic,
but it doesn't matter. It's a huge number, right?
Huge number of people die from indoor air pollution. An equally large number of people die from waterborne diseases, right? Yeah. From drinking water that is polluted, and by tapping into the sun, we can access clean sources of water and purify water as well. So that is another important health angle that solar energy can help address. And then finally, there's the whole health clinic side of things. You can't operate a modern health facility without electricity. And we've had the pleasure and the honor of working with Partners in Health, an NGO in Boston, founded by the late Dr. Paul Farmer, who was deeply loved. He passed away a few years, but he was an icon in the world of public health. He believed that his goal was to bring quality healthcare to everyone in the world, and he felt that health equity was a human right. So we ended up partnering with Dr. Farmer and Partners in Health to electrify initially clinics in eastern Rwanda, and subsequently in Lesotho, and then finally in Haiti, where they had their primary operations. Their initial start was in Haiti. They eventually expanded to other countries, but Haiti was always central to them.
How did you track these benefits? Are cascading, right? You're leveraging so many benefits in a community. How did you track that? I mean, I imagine that your funders also wanted to know what the impact was, but talk a little bit about tracking and evaluating the success of your programs.
Yeah, that's a really good question. A lot of it, some of it's been anecdotal. Yeah, where we have testimony from the field, talking about how their lives have improved. But also we've more recently started to put in metrics and start to quantify the impact that we're having in the areas of health. We actually worked with the United Nations Foundation to solar electrify 62 clinics in Uganda and Ghana. And the WHO actually went in and looked at some of the before-after situations in these clinics to see the impact that we were having with having electricity available at these clinics. It makes a huge difference. And going forward, we want to continue to actually dive deeper into the world of metrics and put everything on the cloud and using blockchain, so we can be very transparent about what's going on. We actually have plans in Benin to take our solar drip irrigation model to the next level by converting one of the solar market gardens into a state-of-the-art hydroponics facility using AI and Internet of Things, IoT, and blockchain technology, so that everything is recorded on the blockchain, and you can look at online from anywhere in the world and see exactly what's happening at the local level.
My mind is spinning just thinking about all the value that you've brought to, you and your colleagues have brought to these communities. to sort of make it simple, we started off talking about 50-watt solar systems in China, off-grid systems in China, and then you got into all these market gardens, and then you've gotten into funding projects at health clinics. So are you still doing the small systems as well as these more sophisticated systems, or have you just evolved to the larger systems?
We're doing mostly larger systems, Ted.
Yeah.
That said, we are still looking at the household level in certain situations. For example, lately, we've gotten more interested in solar cooking, which historically is something that's not been addressed by photovoltaics.
Yeah.
But we've recently come across a new type of solar electric cooker, e-cookers, that have tremendous potential at the household level as well as at the community level.
Yeah. I love this name of this area in South Africa, the Valley of 1,000 Hills. And I think you alluded to this project already, where you put in solar for a school system. It was, I think I read, a 2.4 kW solar array. And then 20 PCs were donated by Dell computers, plus a satellite dish. That was what really, that's, I think you mentioned that your colleague there was sort of blown away. If we could just have the internet.
It was extraordinary. I was lucky to be part of, to be there when they celebrated that, the school, and then it was especially fun to travel to Mexico with two kids that had won this competition. There was a competition sponsored by the International Solar Energy Society called Solar Schools Brighter Future, where any school that had installed solar could submit an essay, what it meant to have solar, and artwork. So I got Mayaka High School to participate, and they ended up winning the grand prize. And the two kids got flown to Mexico City to present their school to an international audience. It was very exciting to be with them in Mexico. So proud, kids that had never left their village, and suddenly they're traveling to Mexico to represent their school.
So it must have just blown their minds. I mean, how life shaping. I think we've talked a little bit about this, the whole village development model, but I was particularly interested in the micro enterprise center aspect of that. Can you talk to that point, please?
Yeah, because we, as Self evolved its whole village approach, we recognized that it was really important to help generate income in the communities, because otherwise, how is this technology going to pay for itself? So we were actually inspired by a UNDP project in Mali. They had developed these, what they called, I think it was the multi-purpose platform, which was essentially a concept of a small business center powered. In this case, it was by diesel. And we said, let's take that concept, but solarize it. So thus was born the Micro Enterprise Center that was solar powered. And this is a center that houses a number of small businesses like radio repair or a barber, different things that require electricity. And it continues. We're working on the next generation of that Micro Enterprise Center in Benin. It's really important to help empower these communities economically. And that's also why we're super excited about the food production, because it has tremendous value, not only in terms of improving nutrition within the community, but it offers the opportunity to actually generate income for the community.
It's incredible. So update some of these numbers on accomplishments. I think I must have gotten these from your website. 550 solar systems in 20 countries.
Yeah, we actually need to go back and revisit that. That was done a few years ago. I can't give you an accurate number now, but it's probably closer to 750 systems.
Yeah. And some of them were funded with grant funding, and others through microcredit.
Yeah, a lot of we're a nonprofit, so we look to foundations to support our work, to individuals, philanthropists. We've also gotten some corporate support over the years, and international aid agencies. For instance, the Inter-American Development Bank has supported our work. The United Nations Environment Program, the Nordic Development Fund. So it's been a mix of foundation, corporate, individual, and aid agency support.
You sound like you've been so busy, and you have been. Is the challenge still just getting more cash? bring more cash to these
Yeah,
projects?
it's still a big
The
challenge.
ongoing challenge, right?
Ongoing. Yeah, we're still relatively small as a nonprofit, so there's always more to do than we have time for, or human resources.
And
I wish.
when you think about where is the greatest need, or is that is that even a fair question? Where is the need for what you're doing right now?
I mean, geographically,
Yeah.
I would say sub-Saharan Africa. I mean, there are pockets of India that still have a large numbers of unelectrified. China's pretty much brought the grid to the entire country.
Yeah.
Um,
It's African
it's
primarily.
primarily Africa. That's where the greatest numbers and percentages of rural populations that still live without electricity.
Yeah. So what are you working on this week? What's the current focus?
Well, this hydroponics initiative is a major focus of ours. We're really excited about that. We want to, and Stanford University, which worked with us years ago with the initial solar market gardens, is back. Dr. Jennifer Burney, just an incredible professor who was at Stanford. She left and now she's back. She's going to work with SELF on the monitoring and evaluation of this hydroponics pilot that we're going to implement soon. Because we really want to be able to capture the data. And we're actually doing a hydroponics model right next to the traditional solar market garden model. So we'll be able to compare these two models side by side. And that's good. I mean, folks will really be interested in seeing the goal is to grow more food with less energy, less water, and less labor to maximize food production. This is, the energy, water, food nexus, which is already important today. And as we go forward, it's just going to become more and more important to the world, assuring everybody has access to water and food. And we think that the sun can play a very huge role in that. God. So there's the Benin project. Another project we're excited about is working with the Maasai in Kenya. This is a remote set of communities in the Maasai Mara, home to the most incredible wildlife. I'm sure people have taken safaris in the Maasai Mara, and this is some Maasai communities that have been without access to electricity. And we're now working with these communities to provide solar water pumping for themselves, and including a rhino sanctuary that's part of their conservancy, as well as street lighting and e-cookers to take pressure off of them to cook within their homes, which has been really hard from a health perspective on them.
Yeah, yeah. Now, you did get a major award, the King Hussein Leadership Award, and it was awarded to you by Queen Noor of Jordan, right? Talk about how did that come about? Congratulations, first off. How did that come about?
I was nominated by another Jordanian who was familiar with our work, and it came as a surprise.
Yeah.
But it was a delightful moment. We got to spend time with her at the Aspen Institute, and yeah, she's a wonderful lady. And I actually traveled to Jordan to see what might be possible there. We unfortunately did not end up working in Jordan. It's one of those things that, looking back, I wish we had done, but I still have hopes that one day we can make a difference there. And I think maybe with this new way of producing food, accessing water for water security and also food security might be an opportunity. I mean, the whole Middle East is a lot of sun, and water is an issue there. So I'd like to think that at some point we can go back and make a difference there in that region.
I think the answer may be no to this question, but are there specific moments that you're most proud of, or specific projects that you're most proud of, or is it just in aggregate the impact that you've made?
People have asked me that question. It's really hard, Ted, because each project is special in its own way. And when I actually get to go to the village and see with my own eyes the impact we've had, it's very gratifying. And I wish I could get out there more often because it keeps my batteries charged to see the work we do. in the field. It's been a real blessing to work with SELF for so many years, because our work is very tangible. At the end of the day, when we complete a project, you actually get to touch and feel and see the difference, whether it's lights being turned on or the water flowing or the food being produced, and the smiles of the people on the ground that are benefiting from this technology. It's life changing. And in terms of selling the mission to potential donors, it's sometimes difficult to convey just the impact we have, because we grow up with electricity here in the US. We take it for granted. It's hard for us who have lived with power all our lives to wrap our minds about what it would be like to be born and grow up in a village without any electricity, without any power, and how it undermines every aspect of life. So part of our challenge is how to convey that. We try the best we can with stories and pictures and videos. We've got plenty of videos on our website as well. And in some cases, we've actually managed to bring some donors to the field. And that's made a huge difference when they actually get to see what's happening on the ground.
How fantastic. Bob, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Ted. I really appreciate this invitation and look forward to staying in touch.
Thank you very much.